Orchestra Pit Politics, to coin a phrase. So, in this social environment, in the internet world, it is uh, it is amazing how you can combine education and technology if you use them properly, and it creates this beautiful, freeing information superhighway that is perhaps the greatest equalizer the world has ever known. So here I am sitting in my little talk box and talking to y'all about what I find to be important. And as I do it, I connect with people who are way higher up in their influence structure and in their expertise. And you post on Aaron Rupar and you connect with Heather Cox Richardson and other people. And so I was commenting on Aaron Rupar's clip where Trump gets distracted by a woman in the crowd, and he says that this person looks like Ivanka and has her turn around for the cameras. And no one really remembers what the news conference was about, with the exception of that part of the news conference. So, based on something that Professor Richardson had written a few days earlier, I wrote a reply to Aaron Rupar's post saying, "Hey, Professor Richardson, could you coin a term for orchestra pit politics?" And Professor Richardson writes back saying, "I think you just did." I think that's hilarious that I would have coined it. It's actually an attenuation from what Professor Richardson has written, and she let us know about the historical reference of where this idea of orchestra pit politics would come from. And so first of all, I encourage everybody to read Professor Richardson's letters every single day, as many of us do. Every single day it's a new story. Every single letter is a point of light. And Americans need to know these stories so we can make sense of what's happening to this country in such a pivotal time. Today's political turmoils are inherently linked in so many ways to our past. And Professor Richardson really makes that clear for us and connects the dots. So Professor Richardson was talking about Roger Ailes, who was a Republican strategist for Nixon and then went on to be a Republican strategist for Bush, I think the first Bush. You can read more about it in the letters from an American that I've posted in the description box of this video. And he then went on to become the CEO of the Fox News channel, which was founded by Rupert Murdoch. And it was founded in 1996, and it's not really that old, but you can see how from 1996 to 2026, this organization has essentially corrupted the meaning of news media, where it is an information outlet, and turned it into what would be a mess of an orchestra pit politics mashup with untethered from reality, with a bias and a slant that has changed how people carry the news. Fox has changed the news media game in the last 30 years, and it all came out of Roger Ailes' brain. So here's Professor Richardson talking about Roger Ailes. Ailes sold his narrative with what he called the orchestra pit theory. He explained, if you have two guys on a stage and one of the guys says, "I have a solution to the Middle East problem," and the other guy falls into the orchestra pit, who do you think is going to be on the evening news? This, and Professor Richardson says, this is a theory Trump has always embraced, and one that drives his second term in office. He has placed television personalities throughout his administration and has turned the White House into, as his media ally Steve Bannon put it, a major information content provider. What Trump does is the action, and we just happen to be one of the distributors, Bannon told reporters from the Washington Post. The administration has replaced traditional media outlets with right-wing loyalists and floods the social media space with a Trump narrative that is untethered from reality. Communications Director Stephen Chung says their goal is to create full-spectrum dominance. Their attempt to convince Americans to accept their version of reality is showing now in Trump's repeated extreme version of the old Republican storyline that the economy under him is great and that the country's problems are due to Democrats, minorities, and women. So this paragraph led me to think that what Donald Trump is doing is playing orchestra pit politics. And lo and behold, right as I was writing this and constructing this, we learned of the horrible tragedy and murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Reiner. And it has shaken up the community, it has shaken up the liberal community, it has shaken up the entertainment industry, it has shaken up activists because Rob Reiner was very much pro-democracy, anti-MAGA activism. And what Donald Trump did was, in response to this tragedy, he wrote a post on Truth Social that essentially says something sad has happened, tells about the murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, and then says Rob Reiner suffered from Trump derangement syndrome, and this may be a consequence of that, or something to that effect. I haven't really gone and fully read and soaked it in because I don't want to. Because I don't want to be tainted by that ugliness, by that evil, by that depravity, by that prototypical orchestra pit politics where he takes the news of a tragedy that has really disturbed so many of us and he flips it into an asinine scandal about what he said. So the next 10 hours, instead of following what happened with Mr. Reiner and Mrs. Reiner's case and realizing that one of the suspects who's been taken into custody is their son, one of their children, all of that sort of takes a side step to Donald Trump's post of his showing of this TDS syndrome and, essentially throwing himself into the orchestra pit so everybody talks about what he has to say as opposed to the tragedy that has happened. And that is what is orchestra pit politics. And that is what we must reject now at a time when Donald Trump seeks to divide us. Why is Donald Trump doing this? Why does Donald Trump keep distracting us from the news? Because Donald Trump has failed to keep every single promise he ever made to the American people. He has failed to lower the cost of living. He has failed to stop the wars that he has said he would stop. He has not made America great. He has taken America from an economy that was the envy of the world and had 0% chance of recession to becoming a country that is teetering on the ledge of recession and definitely has fallen into a stagflation. He's, instead of carrying through his promises of keeping Americans safe and taking care that the laws be faithfully executed, his police state is violating the laws and the Constitution in open and shamelessly. He's defying court orders, he's overreaching on congressional powers, and he is creating a police surveillance state while also attacking boats in international waters and trying to incite a war when he is at a point where he has failed in all his policy promises. He keeps talking about his immigration promise that he has kept. Well, his police state is taking immigrants off the streets maybe, but they are also taking US citizens and people who are legal immigrants off the streets and detaining them without due process of law. That is unlawful, that is unconstitutional, that is illegal. And that is what Donald Trump is really doing. On the other hand, he is distorting the news by doing what he did with Rob Reiner's news, or what he does with pointing at somebody saying they look like Ivanka and have them turn around. So you forget about what the substance of the news is. You look at what he is saying and then you discuss the absurdity of what he's saying. We need to stop that. We need to focus on what is happening in America and consequently all over the world. We need to see how Donald Trump has broken his promises. We need to see how he is the most dangerous person to be in America right now, and he's sitting in the Oval Office. We need to pay attention to that and not his brand of Orchestra Pit Politics. With that said, thank you for listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.